All right, so welcome back to the channel where I once again am perfectly on time. As always, I have never, in fact, been late on a video, not a TBR, not a previously read or otherwise known as a wrap up, as I have always called it. Everything is consistent on this channel. That's why my July wrap up comes exactly when I planned for it. Nobody fact check me. Now, before I actually get into the wrap up for July, I actually just want to give a quick shout out to Thomas J. Prestopnik. Hopefully I said that correctly. This is a self-published author who sent me these gigantic fantasy novels. They're all about 600 or so pages. This is a trilogy called Nicholas Raven and the Wizard's Web. He sent me a nice written letter, so I appreciate that, sir. Definitely everybody check this out. It sounds pretty cool. It's an epic fantasy tale. Quick synopsis here. Nicholas Raven. Let me make sure I'm reading the right one. Are they all saying the same thing? They are. Cool. I just want to make sure I don't spoil anything. Nicholas Raven, a young gristmill accountant, just wanted a little adventure in his life, but he gets more than he bargained for. When tumultuous winds of the past sweep him away on a journey he'll never forget. Further down, you have, against a backdrop of war, kidnapping, mistaken identity, and newfound love, Nicholas becomes embroiled in a rescue mission along the shores of a sprawling sea, takes part in a quest to reforge a magic key that could tip the balance of power in a growing war, and is ultimately drawn into the center of a tangled web of intrigue that has plagued his life from the very start. So it sounds pretty cool. He actually wrote in the letter that he's written and published several things, and this is kind of like a big epic fantasy idea that he had kicking around in his head for a while, and finally got up to doing it in his 30s. So congrats to you, sir. Awesome job. And I will definitely give these a chance, and they will go with all my other self-pub books right here. Aragon is going to get the boot because that ended up getting published. So that's going to take a little Nacarino down next to Harry Potter, and my self-pub shelf will grow. Okay, fine, I lied. The Aragon gets to stay. The candle took an exit. So, July, I read a couple of things. I read 4 books. One was gigantic, which is why it took up about half the month. But this one was not gigantic. This one was not gigantic, though. And that is Foundation by Isaac Asimov. So this, of course, is one of the literary classics in the sci-fi genre, where everybody kind of talks to this book as being the, no pun intended, foundation of a lot of science fiction and fantasy stories in general. I was not actually expecting the structure of the book to be what it was. I didn't really read too much into what this book was about before I read it, and it's essentially a collection of short stories. You're following Harry Seldon as he mathematically predicts what will happen in the future and the downfall of civilization and the creation of Foundation, which will kind of help salvage humanity. Otherwise, there will be I believe it was 30,000 years of basically darkness and war and post-apocalyptic kind of not fun. So this book actually gets into a lot of really great themes and ideas. It's definitely an idea-driven, very dry sort of sci-fi book. Heavy focus on dialogue. It's almost entirely dialogue. Lots of conversations back and forth, political conversations, war conversations, just talking about humanity in general. And there's not a lot of characterization outside of Seldon himself, which is pretty par for the course for a lot of these older older sci-fi novels, is they're not character-driven stories, they're idea-driven, and because it's short stories, it's kind of just capturing ideas one at a time and growing into a larger narrative, but it's not something like Sun Eater or Red Rising. Very, very different vibes. But it is excellent for what it does, and you can really see how a lot of stories today have pulled from it. And I mean, just looking at Dune, which I don't even know the publication difference. What was it? Yeah, so this was copyright 1951. Frank Herbert's Dune was 64, something like that. So you have, between this and that, you have, galactic empires. There's kings in this, which I wasn't expecting because it's so far in the future. You have a lot of these things that are very familiar in sci-fi today that you see pulled from. So it was really cool to get a grasp of what some of this was. And honestly, it gives me a little bit more hope that I can go to some of these older science fiction novels and really enjoy them, because some of them I just haven't really gotten into. Something like Do Electric Sheep dream of potatoes? What is it called? Do androids dream of electric sheep? I didn't really get into it. It was very dry and kind of boring to me, and maybe I just have to give it another shot. But for some reason, this one clicked with me, and I liked it a lot. So yeah, Foundation. I'm going to check out the rest of them. I don't know at all what to expect from the rest of the novels that were written in this series, if they take on more of a narrative structure or if they're very similar to this. Who knows? We'll find out. Next up, I continued on with The Last Kingdom and the Saxon Tales. So, Bernard Cornwell, The Pale Horseman. So, book 2 of the Saxon Tales stories. Is that what it's called? The Last Kingdom. Anyway, so this book was fantastic. I freaking love Bernard Cornwell's writing. I love the way that he creates these incredibly interesting and intriguing characters amidst all of the real history that he's pulling from and basing these novels off of. Uhtred is fantastic to follow. All the Vikings and the Saxons that you are introduced to are all interesting in their own ways, and you get a ton of fun fantasy narrative from these books. Lots of war, dialogue, politics, thieving, raiding, Vikings being Vikings. And Uhtred is honestly a little bit almost more unlikable in the books so far compared to the show. And that's probably just because Alexander Draymond is just so charming in the show. And they just lean into that, sort of like how the show for Game of Thrones really leaned hard into Tyrion not being a monster, as he kind of is in the books. So I appreciate that, and I like seeing the dynamic and the differences between the show and the books. And they're just so fun to read. The dialogue is excellent. I love the back and forth. I love Uhtred's plotting and strategy in all these battle situations. I love to hate certain characters that are just out there to kiss the ass of King Alfred or whoever else is in charge, whether it be a Viking or a Saxon. And just these some of these little shits that just pulling over on Uhtred all the time because they don't like him. He's a pagan. Yes, he's a Saxon, but he's really a Viking at heart. And that rubs a lot of these Christians in these books the wrong way. They are not very accepting of Viking culture, which, I mean, who can blame them to a certain extent? They kind of rape and pillage and burn everything in their sights. But Uhtred's not like that until sometimes he is. But he's a lot of fun to follow. I really like that Stiapa is more of a character in the books. He was kind of very much in the backseat of the show, so it's cool seeing the difference there, and he's actually kind of funny. I love the books. I love Cornwell's writing, and again, I'm not going to keep saying this every time that I read one of these, but if this is one of the weaker books that he writes, then I'm probably going to end up reading everything that this man wrote, because I constantly hear that Warlord Chronicles and some of his other books that he's written are better than the Saxon Tales, so super pumped to continue on. I love these books a lot. Next up is the chunky boy that took me a while to get through, but I absolutely loved it, and it is my favorite Dark Tower book as we currently stand, Wizard and Glass. So by Stephen King, of course, the king himself. I love the Dark Tower. It's fantastic. It's fun. It's super fucking weird and out there. There's so many random things that this man does in these books that I'm just like, who would have ever thought of that other than Stephen King? There's always, you get at least one like weird sexual scene that you're just kind of like, okay. I'm okay, sure. That's a little weird, but okay. Not entirely necessary, I don't think. But other than that, I love his character work in these stories. He's just really good at doing really interesting, weird things, like in the Wastelands and in the beginning of this book, a battle of wits and riddles with a freaking doom train that's sentient. It's just like, where do you come up with this shit, man? It's so cool. It's so fun. I finally saw one of the main tie-ins to Salem's Lot, which I had been waiting for a little bit to see. So far, I haven't seen or heard much of other tie-ins yet. I'm sure I've missed some, which probably just means they're kind of small. But I'm loving this so far. I've really fallen in love with Stephen King's writing. Can't wait to continue. As part of this month in August, I'm going to get to Win Through the Keyhole, which is kind of like a half book. I guess it's like a bridge novel. But this right now, definitely the front runner. I love it. And I still love The Gunslinger too. But man, this book was something else. It was super cool. Just the twists and turns that Stephen King writes into these books is just, I never know what to expect. And it's always engaging, and I love it. And last but not least, another book that I absolutely loved and have since read the second book in the series and love that as much, if not a little bit more. That's Jade City by Fonda Lee. Wow, this one was fantastic. I thoroughly enjoyed this. Everybody kind of told me I was going to love this book, and go figure, I did. This is definitely different than a lot of fantasy that I'm used to. It's not high epic fantasy. This is very, very low fantasy. I can't even really compare it to something like First Law outside of sort of the ferociousness of the world that you live in, and you're not following good people, and it's relatively low magic. So what's really cool about this, though, is that Jade is not just a magic system, it's also a currency, it's a status system, status symbol. Jade kind of runs everything in these books, and the entire story, plot, characters, narrative, the larger world kind of revolves around this Jade trade, Jade warriors, and it's just really freaking cool to watch these warring clans, essentially mafia gang families, going head to head with each other for power and control of land and territory, and, you know, stepping into politics and getting, you know, their people in certain places to rule. And of course, you're following, again, like I said, you're not following good people. So like, you're cheering for certain characters, but they're not nice. Like, the few nice people in this, like Andy, damn, like, you see his struggle because he doesn't want to be part of this. It's like the gorilla in Sing when he's like, Dad, I just don't want to be part of your gang. Like, that's basically what this is. And I love it. The dialogue's great. The characters are fun and interesting. And it's cool to just see this low fantasy setting in, you know, not a medieval Western European type of setting that we're used to in a lot of fantasy. So it almost feels very grounded in a way. And I could see exactly why this would make such a good adaptation, or just, it's just, you can picture a lot of this because it feels very much like a modern day mafia tale with a little bit of magic mixed in. And it's not like in your face spell casting. You know, they channel with their Jade, or they can like choke somebody out and kind of like power themselves with Jade and make them die faster. Or they, you know, have Jade embedded like gauntlets that they can basically use as strength. It's just the different uses of Jade is pretty cool. I love that there is a downfall or side effect of using Jade for certain people where it can literally make them go crazy. There's just a lot of cool nuances to this story so far. Jade War was an excellent follow-up, and I can't wait to finish the series and see what the hell happens. Also, something that Fonda Lee has done in these books that has very much impressed me is she does not shy away from sexuality, representation, sex scenes. One, she's probably written better sex scenes than any male author that I've read so far. She, at the forefront, like, very obviously has gay characters. She doesn't shy away from anything, and I really appreciate that and kind of salute that, because not a lot of authors do that, and it's super cool to just see that done so well and not treated as like they're not trying to win any points. It's not like Disney being like, see there in the back behind Kylo Ren, like there's a gay couple there kissing. Like, that's not representation. So yeah, really cool to Fonda Lee for doing what she's done in this series, and I like it a lot. But yeah, so that wraps up my July. Those were the books that I read, and I loved all of them, honestly. It was a pretty great month. August is shaping up to be pretty awesome as well, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the year. There's some new releases coming out that I'm super excited for. Thank you again, Thomas, for sending me your books, and I look forward to those as well. So peace out, guys.